Hello, Make It Yourselfers. I'm Tracy from Oh the Things We'll Make. Today I'm going to show you how to make the brown butter bites that I have been loving lately. Every once in a while I want a dessert, and it doesn't have to be sweet. It's just something that's a little bit different. Brown butter is often used in recipes to give a caramelized flavor to sauces, but in the carnivore keto community it has become a really popular non-sweet, dare I say? Because it has that nice toffee flavor. But toffee, when you make it, it has butter in it, and then you caramelize the butter with sugar. But interestingly enough, just by cooking down the butter, you can get that same flavor that you would get in toffee. You're making something very similar to ghee. I've shown you how to make ghee in the past. It's a great fat for people who have issues with dairy. Even though it's made with butter, most people can handle it because you're straining out most of those proteins that are troublesome. The milk solids will separate from the rest when you cook down the butter, and they fall to the bottom. And with ghee, you filter those out. But with brown butter, you keep those in. When you are pouring brown butter into candy molds or something like this, the solids will fall to the bottom, and it will just give that nice, fun look to your finished treat. Some people are concerned with cooking those milk solids, thinking that it could make them more toxic. If you're using this as an occasional treat, you're using it as a dessert, you're using it to add flavor occasionally, then I don't see why there's an issue to making something like this. But if you're really concerned, you can filter out those protein solids. You have ghee, and you can do the same thing and just filter the solids out and try it and see if you like it that way. One thing that's interesting about ghee that makes it different from butter, which is why I didn't like it as much at first. I do like the flavor of ghee, but I don't like the grainy texture. If I'm just gonna eat it by itself, it's just something that I don't normally like. But if you keep these really cold in the fridge or in the freezer and you have small amounts, then you bite into it and it gives you that crunch almost. It's not really crunch, but it's that hard bite, like if you're biting into a piece of hard, dark chocolate. But in this case, without all the oxalates and without all the sugar. For today, I'm going to show you how to make the brown butter bites. Now, I'm going to be making a bunch of these because I'd rather batch make and have them and not have to worry about them for a week or two, or however long I can get away with not having to make any more. Today, I'm going to be using 750 grams. Not that it matters. Use what you have. There's really no need to measure. The only reason you'd want to measure is to know how much is going into each of your molds if you want to be counting how much fat intake you're getting in. But to make the recipe, this is so simple, no other ingredients except for a little bit of salt if you want it. And I actually like to add a little bit of salt to these. Even toffee normally has a bit of salt. I like that combination of the toffee flavor with just a tiny bit of salt. Now, if you were to use salted butter, which you can use, but all of the salt will fall down to the bottom with the milk solids that get filtered out. It can get pretty salty. Depending on how salty you want these to be, you might want to just stick with unsalted butter and then add a little bit of salt so you can make them to suit your taste. I like to also be able to put a little bit of salt crystals on top. I just love the way it looks, and I just love the way it feels when you're eating it. Okay, let's get started. I'm gonna heat up my pan. I'm using a pretty large stainless steel pan. When it starts to simmer, it can start to bubble up and spatter a little bit all over. So if you have a little bit bigger pan, it can help keep things a little bit on the neater side. You can cut this up into chunks to make it melt faster. I'm not even going to bother today. I'm just going to put in all 3 of these blocks of butter. See, I told you I like butter. Okay, we're going to melt the butter. At first you can use a medium heat and get it melting faster. And then once it starts to come to a simmer, you're going to want to lower the heat. At first it's more of a waiting game, but then once it starts to simmer, you're going to want to be more actively stirring it and scraping along the bottom and the sides just to make sure that the milk solids don't stick to the bottom and sides of the pan because they can burn. So just continue to go through and scoop it up, and you can start looking to see how the milk solids are falling to the bottom of the pan. And you just want to occasionally take a look at those and see what the colors are. It's more of a creamy milk color at first, but then later on they will start to get toasty and they will become more of a honey color. And then with time, you will see them turn to a medium or dark amber color, and that's exactly what we want. Okay, this smells absolutely wonderful. It has like a nice toffee flavor to it. Now I'm going to take it off the heat to make sure that the protein solids have fallen to the bottom so that they don't get too cooked. We don't want them to burn. It will foam up a bit again towards the end. So I'm stirring it a little bit to get some of the foaminess to incorporate into the rest of it. And I also stir up the milk solids to make sure that they're not all sticking to the bottom. Now I'm going to add just a tiny bit of salt now, and then I usually add some to the top of them when I unmold. But there we go, that's just a bit of salt. And I stir that in, and then I get some molds ready for these. Today I have these nice square molds. What I like to do is I get these larger molds and I cut them down so that they fit better into my freezer. They usually sell for much more cheaply, these larger molds, but they're kind of hard to move around. Yes, you can let them cool right where you fill them, and then once they solidify, you can stick them in the freezer. But my freezer isn't wide enough to stick these large molds into it. So what I like to do is cut these up. I put a little bit of parchment paper between layers, and I stack a bunch. And that's just, for me, the easiest way to get a bunch of these into the freezer. Another little handy trick I have is this. I have used this for so many recipes. I absolutely love this. This is from a brand called LeQ. I know it's really easy to find here in Spain. I'm not sure in the US. I'll have to look it up. If I can find it, I will link to it. But yes, this is wonderful for getting liquids in. What you want to do is try to get some of the bottom solids and some of the ghee into each of the compartments. I usually use this LeQ Deco pen to draw in some of the protein solids and evenly distribute them amongst the different compartments. Then I squeeze out some of the liquid ghee over top of them just to make sure that there's a little bit of each in each of the compartments. If I try to use a spoon, I'm a little bit clumsy and I get it all over, but this works really well. Another fun thing you can do for the holidays is find some really cute candy molds that are holiday themed, so you can make some fun toffee desserts for when everybody else is eating their chocolate. You have something that's fun that you can have and enjoy at the dinner too. Once the brown butter had become more opaque and solid, I moved all of these into the freezer. Now, I didn't even bother yesterday to worry about putting some parchment paper between because it was pretty solidified. It's cold out right now. So in my kitchen, it gets cold enough so that it solidifies enough that I don't really need it. But if you're going to put it in before it's completely solid, or if it's warmer in the summertime, then it's a good idea to put a little bit of parchment paper in between each layer. Now these are quite solid and it's very easy to unmold these. So what I do is I keep them in the fridge in a container with a cover, and that way they're ready to eat when I want to snack on these. You can also use your brown butter bites to add a little bit of toffee flavor to a fatty latte with or without egg. I like to blend up with hot water, a little bit of butter, And then I add one of these into it, and I froth it up with a milk frother, and it becomes a sort of nice toffee flavored fatty latte. And no coffee, although you could use coffee for it. But that's really good. It's nice and calming, and something nice, warm to sip on in the winter time. So I'm going to finish unmolding these. You can see I also made some cute Christmas themed brown butter bites. I especially like these little stars, and you have something that you can enjoy too. For another fun alternative, you can make some whipped brown butter bites. To do that, you'll want to whip your brown butter. When it has solidified, but it still is on the slightly soft side, you can take a milk frother or another type of electric beater to whip up your brown butter. Once you have it whipped up, you can spoon it into your molds. Here you can see that I have some traditional brown butter bites and some whipped brown butter bites in the same mold. Here you can see how I generally fill up a mold with some whipped brown butter. I just scoop it over the tray, and then I use my spoon to evenly distribute the brown butter amongst all of the molds. Then I use a spatula to really make sure that each of them are filled, and I can clean up the mold a little bit. This allows me to more cleanly cover the mold with some parchment paper. That way I can stack my trays when I stick them into the freezer. Once frozen, I will unmold these whipped brown butter bites just like the regular brown butter bites. The whipped brown butter bites will have more of a soft truffle feel, while the regular brown butter bites have more of a hard chocolate feel. For another alternative, you can also add some bacon and make some bacon brown butter bites. I hope you enjoyed this recipe. If you liked it, give me a thumbs up, and I would love for you to subscribe to this channel. And thanks again.